was finally sailing again after 6 months in the boatyard. But now that I had an interior that I really liked, I just felt that the rig was a bit boring, so I decided to switch the 100-year-old design to a 1,000-year-old design, all while cruising around and visiting friends. Well, we were in the yard for like 6 months, another week getting the boat packed, and now actually moving. It's a relief. Chaotic on board here, including I'm transporting this wind vane for a friend. I saw it on Facebook Marketplace and was like, that's exactly what you need. Kind of decided that after all the work done on the interior, I'm not really happy with the rig. So one thing I haven't mentioned before, but I've been considering, is re-rigging the boat as a crab tour. With the help of my friend Josh, I'd recently tested out this idea on a smaller catamaran, and of course I had plenty of crab claw experience from proa sailing. But would this scale up to a bigger boat? There was only one way to find out. We crab claw ketch with an outside jibe prop mast at the front and an unstayed standing like stub mast at the back. That's sort of like reminiscent of a Cornish lugger, where they have the dipping lug sail at the front and a standing lug at the back. The idea is the mizzen should be half the size of the foresail, so that you can reduce sail by just dropping the mizzen, and then the next reef is dropping the main and then moving the mizzen forward. So you go from full sail to 2/3 to 1/3. I think that's a good combination. I'm feeling a little bit apprehensive about it actually, because you know it's it introduces a bunch of unknown factors, and even though I might not be a massive fan of the Bermudan rig, it is, I'm used to it. But that said, it'll be a lot more interesting to have something different and something that I think has some really interesting properties, and of course I will find out by testing it on a large scale rig. Of course, the first thing is I needed materials to build that rig, so I went to Camp Coromandel to visit my bamboo guru. Our way to collect premium bamboo. This is Rongamite, who's my local bamboo expert.
Yeah, we're going to get a big fat crumbling bamboo, and it's going to be heavy and we'll see how much we can get away with.
We also stopped off at Rongamai's workshop. As well as bamboo, Rongamai is also obsessed with this modular construction design called grid beam. So this is kind of the end result of it. Can just be bolted together like Meccano, but to make big stuff. Here's a
Janky cart.
Yeah, a cart for moving around your thing. And
Here's my blackboard.
here's a tool rack, a workbench made from grid beam. Oh yeah, this is a neat blackboard.
On wheels. We got these little laser cut parts that are great. All open source. Just email me because I put the file on.
So Rongamai's built a machine to manufacture this, and I highly recommend you encourage him by buying some of it. These are bolts for it.
Spare ones.
So you sell these at the local market?
I tried to.
Yeah.
Goes drills lots of holes. So this would be in there.
Oh yeah, that one clamps it in.
And then
These.
just after that, that slams it into that.
So the machine comprises of a whole bunch of drills that all set up next to each other. That's called a gang drill, and then there's a pneumatic clamp that slowly moves into the drills. The beam is drilled halfway in from each side so that there is no tear out on the faces. This is quite a few iterations on from the first design, and it consistently drills all the holes straight. The last problem to solve is just clearing the sawdust. Yeah, so Rongamai is definitely much better at the engineering than the marketing, so please email him and try to buy some off him.
Bamboo there. Too far down, it's going to be solid all the way through.
Yeah. Yep.
So, but if you go too high, you make a pocket where all the water collects and you breed mosquitoes.
Oh, yep.
So we'll just kind of cut here, I think, and then if we need to, we can cut a slot for the water to drain.
Yep. Quite a bit thinner at that length. Pulling them out was just a bit more difficult, so we're going to use the truck. Yep. Now heading back to the barrier to help my friend with a new with a wind vane project. Got all the bamboo. So all this bamboo is double the amount I will need to re-rig the boat. Those are going to be mizens. Those are the yards spars for the mainsail, and the two big ones there are going to be the mast. Oh, and the small one's going to be the aft mizzen. I've got a couple of backups because it's entirely plausible that I'll break a mast or a spar. I can get through this little gap. I got to Port Fitzroy and we spent the next couple of days fitting the south steering gear onto Mark's boat. Although I've sailed thousands of miles now, I've done it all with my own homemade self-steering design, and I don't actually know how good a commercial one is. So it was great to go sailing with this and see that mine's definitely the same ballpark. Okay, today we're scraping bamboo. I scraped the waxy outer stuff off the bamboo to help it dry out. This will also enable epoxy and paint to stick to it once it's dry. This took some time, but after a couple of days I had enough bamboo scraped to start the project. So I've left Grey Barrier, sailing south east a bit on my way to go visit a friend. He has a really cool boat. That night I anchored in the bottom of Mercury Island, and then in the morning continued to Whitianga. Just arriving in Whitianga. See quite strong current, but seems not as bad as I remember. Right, and that cat down there looks like it's going to be fast. This is not actually Hamish's boat, this is his day job. This boat's so flash it actually has ball bearing blocks on the lazy jacks. Yeah, I see it. This is a boat that takes tourists out, so it sailed quite conservatively, but despite that, it was pretty fast. We just like turned away a little bit and just... Oh, yeah, and it's like, oh, now there's a lot more whitewater. Oh, shit. Yeah. Do you want to appear in the video?
Yeah. Easy.
This is Hamish. Wait till you see his boat. It's only about a metre longer than my boat, but it's much wider and about double the sail area. I got the impression it could go a lot faster than this if you really pushed it. After going out on this boat the other day that I got to get like an establishing shot like of the boat. My friend Will was in the area, and that evening we found ourselves at the local open mic night. That's Will playing the bass. Now this is Hamish's boat, Mariva. I think I'd call this a hippie mega yacht. Viewers that are sufficiently far down the Polynesian catamaran rabbit hole will recognise this as a Hans Klaar boat. It's got these cool Viking style side rudders. The funny thing is that when Hamish was a kid, his dad built the Pahi 31, the boat I have, so I like to think that if I had a kid, it would become Hamish. Getting back to boat stuff, I started turning this bamboo into a rig. Here I am making a mast step from a piece of quila that Mark gave me. I'm not doing this freehand, I'm using a pattern follower bit that has bearing at the top and the blades underneath. That turned out okay. Next I made a step for the mizzen. The mizzen will be stepped in the aft cockpit and lashed to the aft beam just in front of the tiller. Of course, I couldn't resist raising a sail just to see what it looked like. Okay, that's good, but now I've got to get the mainsail ready. The first thing is plugging the ends of the bamboo that would be the boom and the yard. So I shaped the plugs with the angle grinder. This is a piece of driftwood that I picked up on Great Barrier Island. I'm not sure what it is, but it's pretty heavy, possibly gum. Okay, that fits. Now let's glue it in. I wet out the inside of the bamboo with some thinned epoxy and then glued the plugs in the end. A solid block in the end means I could drill a hole through which to tie the bamboos together without the bamboo splitting or getting water inside. I'm just going to go dry out over there where there's some grass to do some sowing.
Oh yeah, right, we're going to get to the grass.
Yeah. So I was planning just to do this in the park, but the owner of the house that I anchored in front of watched my channel and invited me to use his lawn. Just picked it out. The lawn's exactly the right size. So thanks a lot to Trevor for that. So this tarp had been my tent, but after using it 6 months in the yard, it had lots of small holes, so I thought it made a better prototype sail than a tent. I had to patch it back together to cover the area that I needed. Then to keep everything in place, I hand sewed it. And then sewed it again on my sewing machine, which I was able to plug in because I was doing this on Trevor's lawn. Thanks, Trevor. To make the edge of the sail strong, I folded the tarp over a rope and then sewed the fold down, again stitching it by hand and then with the machine. With my soldering iron, I melted lacing holes every 15 centimeters. I just measured the spacing of my holes with my hand like this, and yes, I did the entire thing without burning myself. Because there are so many holes so closely spaced, there is very little stress on any particular hole, so it's not necessary to use particularly strong rope for this, although I have stitched on a webbing strap to strengthen the corners. Finally, it was time to get the old mast down, using the new mast as a gin pole. One thing that appealed to me about this boat was that it would be easy to get the mast down, and so I'd be able to go under bridges and stuff. But this is actually the first time I got the mast down after launching. I'm sure there was a stainless steel bolt that fit here, but when I was setting the boat up to launch, I couldn't find it, so I just chucked this steel bolt in, and now it's seized. After a bit of wrestling with it, I decided to just cut it off. This was actually a mistake. I should have just unbolted the whole bracket. But anyway, I guess I'm committed now. The sun was about to set, so it wasn't a good time for a test sail. so I just raised the sail and took some photos. The next morning I slung the mast under the boat. Thank you to Hamish for this excellent suggestion. The next afternoon I had my first test sail. I didn't manage to film it very well, but my main accomplishment was figuring out a few things that didn't work very well, such as having a single sheet that I carried round to the other side of the boat when jibing. The next day I set it up with a sheet on each side, and I changed the position of the rigging to the mast end. This is the third test. Now I'm outside of the estuary. So given that it was actually ready to be on the tarp, I think it's actually like we're sailing to windward. It's I mean it's good. It's nice. So with this setup, instead of tacking, you jibe. Now this boat never tacked very reliably, and in rough conditions I pretty much had to jibe anyway, so giving up tacking to get a really gentle and easy jibe was actually a big improvement. Another really nice thing is that the boom never comes over the cockpit, so it just feels actually a lot safer and less cluttered as well. And of course the boat looked a lot more interesting too, and I think more aesthetically cohesive. Unfortunately I wasn't filming that, but the mast just dropped. Oh, the mast didn't drop, sorry, the shackle holding the halyard gave out, so I need to lower the mast to fix that. See if we can do that while on the water. Of course I did expect some teething problems, and the first interesting one was that how I'd lashed on the halyard block wasn't very durable. However, I was actually able to get the mast down while hove to in the water with just a sheeted in mizzen. Yeah, so this one came off, flashed it back on with a lot of umpway there, so hopefully that's good now. The first time I got the mast back up, some of the lines were a bit tangled, so I actually had to get the whole mast up and down twice, but all that took less than 20 minutes. And you'll also notice that same cliff has been in front of me the entire time, so heaving to with the mizzen actually worked really well. So soon I was underway again. So polytarp I think is good enough for a prototype, but in the large sizes it's actually getting quite expensive, such that it's about the same price just to find an old second-hand Dacron sail, which is probably stronger also. I had found a couple of inexpensive sails, I just had to make a couple of miles progress to windward to meet the seller. So I just bought 2 sails. It's actually a proper business that sells second-hand sails. Sailbrokers.co.nz. They're actually in Coromandel. They dropped off the sails at the beach here. I'm very happy with service like that. That night I anchored in the estuary behind Cook's Beach. A beautiful spot if you shallow draft and can dry out. The next day I continued sailing south. This is the third time with this rig on this boat. I really love it. It's just a lot of the reasons are intangible, but I like it. Central Cove over there, a very popular tourist destination, as you can see. Hopefully a nice picture of me ends up on someone's Instagram.